We are well into Dynasty draft season, so it's time to think about those players that we need to be keeping, trading away, or cutting to make space on the roster. So let's have a game of Keep, Trade, Cut, starting with Mr. Luther Burden. His stock is sky high with DJ Moore out of town. ADP currently, for what it's worth, wide receiver 18, and he was last year's wide receiver 48. Factor into all this that Zacchaeus is also no longer in Chicago alongside Moore. You have 28% of the 2025 targets. That's 100 passes to be redistributed. So last year, 82 targets for 713 yards, and he's likely to be taking that next step up. That's what everyone's anticipating this year. Is he a player that we're going to be really, really high on coming into the season, or do we think those passes are going elsewhere in this offense, gentlemen?
I mean, for me, I'm quite a big Doomsday fan, and I think he had a really good start last year. And, you know, Loveland as well has been so good. Burden's decent, but I'm not convinced that he's going to, you know, he's obviously going to get some of that share, but I just think perhaps the other two will take a little bit more of that away.
Yeah, Tom stole my thunder there. All roads lead to Rome, and Rome, I think, is going to be the man in Chicago. And like I say, Loveland is going to take the lion's share of those targets, I think. So I'm not as high on Mr. Burden as you may be, Pestle, but yeah, we'll discuss the other two before we kick him to the curb, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be going all on Loveland. Anyone that's watched our recent shows, that won't be any huge shock. But let's move on then. Before we look at the whole trio, let's talk about the bad boy for life, Rashee Rice. ADP wide receiver 17. Last year's wide receiver 40. He only played 8 games due to that suspension. The injury the year before as well gave him only 4 games. In the 8 games last year, though, he had 5 top 12 games and averaged 10 targets per game. We know he can do it, but can he stay fit? Probably more importantly, can he stay out of mischief? I mean, the time of recording is serving some time. That's going to hinder his knee injury rehab as well, apparently. So hopefully he'll be ready to start a training camp. But there's a lot of question marks, and he loves setting himself out some red flags every offseason.
What's he actually done? Because I'm not caught up in the loop of that. How much can we say? What can we legally say he's done?
Well, he's basically broken his what's him called, hasn't he? So he's on he was arrested last year. Parole, that's the word I wanted. Yeah. So he's wrecked his parole. Basically, he's got caught for marijuana, and it's quite interesting because I think really over the last few years the league seemed to have softened a little bit on marijuana use. I know a few years ago players were getting banned left, right, and centre for it. Perhaps they're following suit a little bit more with the NFL, which seems with the NBA, which seems to have taken quite a softer stance. But you've just got, you know, jail time. Surely he's going to get another big suspension.
Yeah, you think so. I mean, Rashee's a vibe. Jail time, he's going to be working out in the yard and he's going to come back bigger and fitter than ever. I'm high on Rashee, partly because who else are they going to throw to other than old, decrepit Travis Kelce? I'm higher on Rice, assuming he gets out of the handcuffs.
Let's go third up then before we discuss who we're keeping, trading, cutting. And what a lad. Wide receiver 13 in his rookie year with over 1,000 yards, 82 receptions, 7 touchdowns. That dropped to wide receiver 30 last year, only 66 receptions, 789 yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't think this is going to be the start of a downward trend though, Flad. So there's been a lot of change in LA. New OC in Josh McDaniel. That looks like that could work absolute wonders to Chargers offense. The O-line surely has to be fitter than it was last year as well. They seem to have injuries left, right, and centre throughout the O-line over the season. I'm a big believer in Justin Herbert, so that's going to play into it as well. I think surely there's nothing stopping McConkey from being wide receiver 1 in LA. I mean, Keenan Allen 33, Quentin Johnson is good, but not a great receiver. What are we going to get? Are we going to get more of the rookie season, or are we getting more of last year from Lad?
I mean, I think they bring in 3 O-line players in the draft or something like that. I think they certainly look to bolster that O-line, haven't they?
Yeah.
I think, you know, is there a better passing quarterback in the league than Herbert? I'm not, I mean, statistically, he's one of the top players as far as that concerned. As you say, the ghost of Keenan Allen, Johnston's, I mean, he's all right, but he's nothing that special. So yeah, he's got to be the wide receiver one there. I think having Hampton back fit as well will sort of help him a little bit. So I wasn't very high on McConkey when he came out, but actually he's really sort of changed my opinion of him.
Yeah, I'm high on McDaniel, if anything. I do agree. Johnston, I'm sure last season he had like a few games where everyone just madly tried to trade for him. And then he basically never touched the pitch again. I think he's got to be wide receiver one there. But he let me down last year as well because I drafted him in pretty much all my leagues. And he didn't set my world alight. And then when I moved away from him to Johnston for those 2 weeks where Johnston just refused to play, that's when he had his big weeks. So he upsets me because of his inconsistency. But if we're being honest, it's probably more my fault than his.
I mean, I'm billing these as breakouts. Luther Burden coming into year 2. He's one of our favourite targets in fantasy football, a year 2 wide receiver. Rashee Rice, we've seen what he can do in flashes. Are we going to get a full season this year so we can truly rely on him as a fantasy asset? And Lad McConkey, are we going to see that bounce back to those levels? Out of those 3 then, who are we keeping? Who are we trading? And who are we cutting? We know in reality, you wouldn't be cutting any of these players when it came to Dynasty roster. But amuse me, which one are we going to go for?
Mark, do you want to start us off?
Go on. I like a redemption story, so I think Rashee's going to come out. He's going to find the Lord in prison if he hasn't already. He's going to come out a renewed character. He's going to go and help the homeless, and he's going to give kittens cuddles and everything. He's going to be a reformed character. I think if he stays fit, like you say, and he stays out of trouble, he could genuinely be one of the top wide receivers in the league. Especially with the guy who's throwing to him and the fact that there isn't too much competition for those receptions. It's just you're gambling on his character more than anything. I would cut McConkey just out of frustration from last year, but again, making it personal, probably shouldn't. But if I was going to cut any, which I wouldn't, but if I was going to, it would be Burden, purely because of the competition for receptions over in Chicago. I'd keep Rice for the vibe and I'd trade away McConkey because I think a couple of good early weeks for McConkey, his stock will go up and I'll get a good price for him.
I just can't keep Rice. For me, Rice has got to be the cut. I love him. He's a fantastic wide receiver. I've tried to trade for him in so many leagues. Even after the suspension stuff, his price was still so stupidly high. I just couldn't get hold of him. And now, obviously, I'm happy that I haven't with the news that's come out. I just worry a little bit about his character. So for me, Rice is the cut. As we've already said, Burden's value is so high at the moment. For me, he's the trade. And then I'm going to keep McConkey.
You don't believe in the redemption of man, and that's fine. That says more about you, Tom. That's fine.
I think I would agree with you, Tom. I think the trade for me is Burden because there is guaranteed to be people in my leagues, if I had him, that are higher on him than I am. And I think Colston Loveland is going to be an absolute target magnet in that offense. I'm not quite so convinced by Burden. And I love Rome Odunze as well. So I'd just like to will that into existence so we get a top season from Rome. If you are joining us for the first time, please do take a moment to subscribe, to like, to give us a share. We've got loads of content throughout the whole of the off season, and we'll be with you all the way through the main season as well. Next up for Keep Trade Cut, we have some super flex quarterbacks, and we start with the main man in Green Bay, Tom's favorite. He loves him. Do you love him enough to keep him on your roster? It is Jordan Love. He has maybe the weakest O-line of these 3, and he hasn't lived up to that QB5 season of 2023. I think the question that everybody that talks about anything to do with Packers and fantasy football, the question is as well, the wide receiver core is one of the more perplexing combinations of players in the whole of sport, let alone the NFL. Is Jacobs good for another 50-ish reception season this year? Possibly. Can we get a little bit of Jordan Love getting some touchdowns into the mix again? 4 in 2023, 1 in 2024, none last year. I mean, Tom, what are you thinking for this season for Jordan Love? Are we going to be seeing him in the mixers around QB 15 as he was last year for eternity, or can we get it back as a top 10 quarterback?
I mean, obviously, I'm horrendously biased, but for me, I think he will be a QB1 next year. He's had some injuries last year. He was never quite fully fit. Struggled a little bit as well the year before in terms of health. The slim down wide receiver room. I'm not having this. It's slim down wide receiver room. They've traded a load of the rubbish away. Well, not rubbish, but less quality players.
Is Matthew
away.
Golden gone?
Sadly not, but we're looking for a big push. He's going to make a huge leap this year to become the wide receiver 1. Don't clip that for the Packers. Obviously, you've got Kraft, Watson, if he can stay fit. It's just about them keeping healthy more than anything. But I'm incredibly biased, so I'm probably not the correct person to ask this question to. Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say Golden will have to make a big leap. He's about 3'2", isn't he? I don't know who receives the ball in Green Bay. Whenever it flashes up on highlights or whatever, touchdown in Green Bay, could be anyone. Literally, I mean, it could be me some weeks. It's just no one knows who the main target is. Jordan Love's just one of them who's there, and he's decent. And I think if you pick him up, you're happy, and if you miss him on the turn, you're not really that upset about. I mean, maybe Tom is, but no one who's not completely biased is completely upset. When we come to the trade cut keep section, I mean, yeah, spoiler alert, Kyler Murray's getting cut. But I think I'd be happy with Love. He's very meh, just meh.
Oh, don't say that.
Sorry.
We've already mentioned. Let's move on to little Kyler Murray. So I've had to crop it so he looked average height against those two on the page. But a new home, new opportunity. His best ever receiving group, similar standard of O-line to what he's been used to. An aging RB, does that give him more opportunity to use his legs? Can he be bothered to use his legs? Who knows? JJ McCarthy waiting to capitalize. I'm not really sure how threatening a prospect that's going to be for him. But if he doesn't make it work, there is someone to pivot to. It just feels like every single year there is a reason to convince ourselves this could be a season for Kyler Murray, and it just keeps not happening. So currently going as ADP QB 28. He only had 5 starts last year, so he was QB 38, but QB 10 in 2024. His last full season, he was very, very useful. Do we see a revamped Kyler Murray, a fantasy asset in Minnesota?
I was going to say, not to make another short joke, but the way you framed that image on the screen, it's like in Lord of the Rings where they put the characters closer to the camera to make them look. Yeah. Little Kyler Murray. I like little Kyler Murray. He was cursed being at the Cardinals, as I think everyone not named Trey McBride is cursed to be at the Cardinals. He was in a tricky spot, but he was still kind of the spark in Arizona, I guess. There were a couple of seasons where he did the work with his legs. There was that one play where he held the ball for something like 30 odd seconds and he ran half the length of the pitch. And that's what he does. He won't give up on a play, which is good for fantasy because the rushing yards are valuable when it comes to the quarterbacks. And 9 isn't going to threaten him, I don't think. I might be made to eat my words. I don't think I will. I quite like little Kyler. I think he might surprise us this season.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I know a lot of the sort of community are a little bit down on him and stuff, but actually I'm quite a big Kyler Murray fan, to be honest. As you say, he's got by far the best wide receiver room he's ever had. There is no way in a million years McCarthy is going to take that spot. I know they've claimed it's a competition or whatever, but he's just, Kyler is a good, if he was just a couple of inches taller, he would be a top quarterback, I think. So I could do with another good year from Justin Jefferson as well. I think we'd all like to see him get back to his greatness. Like you say, you can see him using his legs quite a lot. They've got quite an interesting offense. Yeah, I don't hate Kyler at all.
What is Jefferson's ADP at the moment? I know we're not talking about him, but
let's have a little look.
Not to put you on the spot.
It will be a lot lower than it was. I mean, he was a 55 at him. I've got him a couple of rosters. He was just so bad last year. And I made quite a big trade for him, I think, in a Superflex trade away at QB in my first round pick. and he's just not done it for the last few years for me. I mean Addison as well. Addison is obviously decent. They've got a decent roster, really, haven't they, in terms of offensive weapons?
So he's currently going as wide receiver 6 in Dynasty startups. So he's available around the start of round 2.
Yeah, see, I did a mock.
Huge value, isn't it?
I did a mock yesterday, and just to pass the time more than anything. And I didn't touch him, but I haven't touched Jefferson for a few years, to be honest. I really, really like him. I'm just not willing to pay the price for him, generally speaking. But it's interesting how he doesn't seem to be affected by whoever's throwing the ball to him. But that's lower than I thought it would be, saying that. And like I say, people are down on Kyler, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think Murray's potentially become a bit of a meme over the last year or so, but I think that's more down to the Cardinals than him, personally.
Call of Duty's got to take some blame.
Well, yeah.
Let's move on to a model professional, and that is Mr. Jared Goff. So he's been really solid over the last few years and still has a great offense, although the Lions weren't quite the force that we'd seen over the last couple of years. Last season, the O-line are on the fringes of top 10 in the league. If their young guards can step up this year, there's not really any reason to doubt to have another solid season. But I do think we forget how poor the start to last season was for fantasy. He was a player that people were pivoting away from and took a long time to trust again towards the end of the year last year. Out of those 3, he's probably not the flashiest name on there, but is the one that has offered the most consistent value, isn't he, regardless of that?
Yeah, but he's certainly aging. He's quite a lot older than the others. Were we starting to see cracks last year? That's my big worry with him, really. Again, another fantastic offense, amazing set of wide receivers, potentially one of the best pairings in the league. But I just worry, that players seem to hit a cliff, don't they, and just fall off. So that is my worry with Goff, really. But as you say, he's done it and he's consistent. Maybe I just like a flashy name. Maybe that's it for me.
I think all of them in this category fit into the at least they're still there bracket. So when you're drafting and every other, like Allen's gone, Mahomes has gone, Jackson's gone, but you're thinking, yeah, but at least Goff, Love, and Murray are still there. So if it gets desperate, I've still got one of them to pick from. The question is, which one would you pick first? Probably Love, actually, just to give Tom something to hold on to. But I'd be just as happy with either of the other two, to be honest. And Goff, he's meh again, but he does the business. He gets it done. Dan Campbell likes to go for it. He's got a decent wide receiver room. Who knows if Sam Laporta comes back as good as he was. Yeah, I'm all right with Goffy.
Who are we keeping? Who are we trading? And who are we cutting out of those? I think I agree with what you say, Mike. For redraft especially, next year, these are the sort of 3 players I'm happy to pass on top QBs, bolster the rest of my roster and pick up a player like this. But from a dynasty perspective, which way are we going?
You can go first this time, Tom.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously the keep is going to be incredibly obvious. I'm going to keep Jordan Love because I'm amazing, super biased. For me, the trade may be a slight surprise. I'm going to trade Kyler Murray. I think his value might be quite high at the moment. And it does pay me to say it, but I think I would cut Goff. But I think, I could be making a mistake there, if I'm brutally honest.
Yeah, I think we've talked Murray up, so we've probably increased his ADP and his value just through this podcast alone. That's influential. I want to trade for him now, just after listening to us speak. Like, I've convinced myself. But no, I'm still cutting Kyler. No, Dynasty, you know what? I'd probably just look at the age because I think these are all very similar. Kyler gets the edge on the fact that he runs a bit more. So, mate, I tend to agree with you. Maybe cut Goff. It kind of pains me to say it, but cut Goff, trade Love purely because I think you'll get more value out of him than Murray at the moment. Keep Murray with the intention of trading him later once he has a few good games, and then I can get a decent quarterback like Baker Mayfield.
I think I would absolutely take the gamble and I'd keep Kyler. Once again, the upside is what you're chasing there. I think I'd probably go the other way. I think I would trade Goff because I think if you've got a team who in contender mode and they wanted that second solid quarterback, I think you might be able to get good value for him this year, perhaps slightly inflated to a contender. And yeah, mainly to annoy you, Tom, I'd cut Jordan Love because he's absolute rubbish. If you haven't already and you've stayed with us this far, absolutely subscribe and give us a share. Help to outthink your league throughout the off season. We've got some round 2 running backs up next. So these are all players that are going in round 2 of Dynasty startups. We've got a couple of rookies on there, and we've got a player who has certainly broken out and then sustained it over the last couple of years. I think I'm going to start, though, with Mr. James Cook. And I apologize to myself now for putting what is a phenomenal highlight reel where he destroyed the Ravens last year. The regression we expected in 2025 did not happen. I'm adamant, though. I'm making a case against James Cook straight up for this, why he would potentially be a Cook candidate. A stat that I think really we need to take note of is 84.8% of running backs with 330 touches in a season fall outside of the top 5 running backs the following year. Per Football Guys, only 27% of running backs coming off 300 touches play a full season the following year. And per Fantasy Footballers, 75% of running backs 340 plus touches saw a decline in fantasy production of 30% or more. Now, James Cook hits all of those metrics. So last year, when we were saying that regression was coming, as a lot of people were, I think it was just based on, yeah, but you can't do that again, can you? And just that feeling that those numbers were so high. But we follow the data at Fantasy Think Tank, and the data would suggest we are in for that. But then again, we've seen it not happen last year, and he just seems to get great opportunity after great opportunity and continually dominate. What way do you think it's going to go for him this year?
Mark, do you want to take this first?
Yeah, go on. You follow the data. I don't. I follow the guttural feeling. And you are right. There is something about running backs that you just don't trust them to repeat it. Even the elite running backs like McCaffrey, there's still part of you that thinks, yeah, but one dodgy tackle and he's out for half a season, which tends to happen with CMC. I think as a position, they take such a battering, such a beating, more so than anywhere else. Even if you look at Saquon, he had the fantastic season, but people were still a little bit off him in the draft the season after, because that's what running backs do. Scatterbo is basically, his career's done already. I think you can smell the CTE on him from here. But that's what they do. They beat themselves to a pulp. Cook is a funny one because exactly like you said, I fully expected him to drop off a cliff last year, and he didn't at all, which kind of makes me think that this year it's going to be a monumental drop off a cliff because he's overdue now. But it's hard to look past him. I didn't draft him at all last year because I anticipated the drop. Kicked myself all season for it. But I'm not too sure I got the balls to draft him again this season because I just think it's such a difficult position to maintain productivity out of. And everyone knows he's coming, has his number a little bit. You've got to think that teams are working towards stopping him. I think it's going to be a tough ask for him this season.
I mean, the problem with that is the team he's on, isn't it? You know, they've got a very good O-line. Obviously, you've got to worry about Josh Allen all the time. You know, and Cook's just shown he can do it. I think, you know, out of the 3 suggestions we've got, he's by far the most elusive runner. He probably takes the least damage out of all of them. He's obviously coming up to that sort of, you know, that age where we tend to like to pivot away from running backs, you know, when they're going on to second contracts and things. I wasn't particularly high on Cook. I know you were quite high on him, Mark, Pester, when he came out into the league, you were quite high on him. I certainly wasn't high on him, but boy, has he proved me wrong, you know. But as you say, the drop-off is more than likely coming, I think.
Let's look at our next one. So we know to the rookies. Let's start first with Omarion and Hampton. So 2 big games in weeks 3 and 4 before that injury week 5. It was looking like we're about to get a true kind of legendary rookie breakout season from before that injury. Missed 7 games and had to warm up again for his next big game in week 17. Used really well in the passing game, 2 in those games. So that's something we can expect to see more of this year. And you just you just kind of trust the Chargers to put together a really good run game for him. Harbaugh is going to want to use him in that way again. He's a player that I think so many people are high on. I'm so glad where I've got him drafted in Dynasty leagues. I've still got him this year. Are we on the cusp of a big breakout of Hampton, or is it more likely to be the next guy we're going to talk about, TeVeyon Henderson?
I mean, I'm a huge Hampton fan. I took him in as many places as I could. I think of all the three you're talking about, more than any of them, he shows that true workhorse ability that can take, every down. As we talked about earlier, they've improved the O-line. He can catch passes. And the coaching staff are incredibly high on him. I think I can't remember on Sleeper or somewhere earlier about it. They were basically saying they were offered an absolute fortune to take the pick, when they drafted him at, I think it was 22. And they just turned it down, because the coaching staff are so high on him. So I'm a big Hampton fan. Doesn't look, obviously he had quite a big injury last year, but he seems to have worked himself back into fitness towards the end of the season. So I expect him to have a massive season this season.
I have no idea. I did not see enough of him last season to make any sort of judgment call whatsoever. The bits I did see, he looks fantastic. Like you say, you got to trust the organisation around him. You trust the people he's working with. He looks the real deal. But if I'm totally honest, there's not enough for me to rush out and spend a fortune trying to bring him into the team, because I just haven't seen it yet. However, I have full faith that it's in him. I'd just like to see it a bit more.
Finally, then we look at TeVeyon Henderson, and he is my absolute favourite of these three. So I won't try to build up the suspense. 42 targets in year one was very, very useful. We could probably see 60, 65-ish this year, we would hope. It took him a while to get going. I felt very, very slow. I'd spent all of the off-season putting get as many shares of Henderson as possibly could. Week after week after week, the breakouts coming. I think I picked him in DFS at value constantly, and it just didn't come until we hit that week 10 point. So he had 10 touchdowns, 9 of which came in week 10 or after. So he really did grow into that season. I think for me, it's that big playability we've got with Henderson. If I'm looking at these three and thinking which one, I think there are other players more likely to be the RB1 overall this year, but which one of these would be within the best shout? I think Henderson's big playability, because there's so many similarities that I see in the opportunity he creates to Jahmyr Gibbs, where when Henderson gets the ball in the backfield, he could take it to the house from wherever he is at that point. Am I being too high on him, though? Am I putting too much into what we saw towards the end of that season? And might we see more of the uncertainty we had in the first half?
I'd say you're spot on, to be honest. They didn't seem to, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't use him much towards the start of the season, did they? And it was kind of who's going to be leading the line, him or Ramondre. But yeah, he's just explosivity, which he did rip off a big run and scoring run against the Bucks. So, I mean, Palmy hates him. But of the three, he is the one that terrifies me the most to be matched up against. He is on the cusp of a breakout. Vrabel needs a distraction. So his breakout could be a good big news story to distract from his own issues. Yeah, I think you've nailed it, Pestle. I think he's the star of the trio in front of us at the moment. Cook, it worries me, the drop-off. Hampton, haven't seen the fully rounded player, although the weeks we did see were fantastic. Henderson is the one that terrifies me.
So I'm probably lowest on Henderson out of all of us, actually. The Patriots infuriate me by continuing to use Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, he's got so many fumbles, so many drops, and yet they just seem to keep faith in him. So I think, out of our three, Henderson by far has the most competition, and not that it should be, but I think in the organization's mind, he's got the most competition. I don't fully envisage him taking over the backfield quite in the way of the other two. So I'm probably lowest actually on Henderson, out of all of us.
So for the final time then, who are we keeping, who are we trading, and who are we cutting?
Go on, Mark.
Oh, I don't want to go first.
You want me to?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so
strongest copy answer.
Yeah, I don't think you will somehow. So for me, I think I would trade James Cook. I'm worried about the drop-off. I think his value is high. If he has a poor season, we're going to lose some of that value. I think the time now is to get rid of him. Yes, people who are very on it will, like ourselves and people who follow the show, they'll know that actually he's like to have regression. But your casual fans, probably won't have a clue. So for me, I would trade Cook away. I'm going to keep Hampton. I love him. I'm really, really high on him. I think he will be that, workhorse back. And I'm going to cut Henderson. It's difficult to say, but yes, I'm going to cut TeVeyon Henderson.
I mean, that would be a big news story for New England. So maybe that would help in that sense. I think you're right. Trading Cook. We are all betting on the regression, which I can guarantee now will not come and we'll all look stupid. But we're sort of betting on that. And of the three, like you say, the more casual fan player, whatever you want to call fantasy fans, they will probably rate Cook the highest. With Cook, you are almost guaranteed an early season big return, whereas Hampton and Henderson might have to sort of grow into their returns. So we'll trade Cook. As for cutting and keeping, I don't want to cut either of them because I think either of Hampton or Henderson could absolutely shoot for the moon. But like I say, if the Bucks were playing one of these two teams, I would be more worried about how Henderson's going to rip us to pieces than Hampton. So I reluctantly, I don't even want, no, I refuse to answer. No, stuff you.
Okay, there we go.
I'll cut Hampton. He's gone. You're trash. He's not.
I think I'd absolutely agree. If you're looking at the value you want to get off, then James Cook is the trade, because as we're three are all aligned, but there's certainly someone in every league that would think you're an idiot for getting rid of James Cook at this stage. So you're going to get good value back. And yeah, for me, the cut is going to have to be Hampton purely because it's more a case of I want to keep Henderson, therefore I have to cut Hampton. As we said, you'd be ludicrous to cut any of these players. It's not going to happen in any league you're in, but it's the point of the game. So for that fact, I'm going to cut Omarion Hampton.
I think it depends I think it depends what league you're in. You know your league makes better than any of us do. If you've got a real casual bunch, trade Cook. If you've got a bunch who know their stuff, trade Hampton.
This was by far the hardest selection, these three as well, by a mile.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same reason I'm looking for anywhere. I've got Jordan Love and I'm putting him on the trade block. Tom, if you want to come and find me.
No one's that desperate.
Well, that was an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. We have gone through our keep, trade, cut, and we'll be back in a few weeks for another round because it's quite a nice little game to play as we're looking at some of our prospects. As I say, we'll be back throughout the off-season with loads more. So please, if you haven't already, it's your final warning. Please do subscribe, like, and give us a share. But that's all from me. It's all from Tom. It's all from Mark. So all that remains to be said is ta-ta and farewell.